Join us, the Humanitarian Heartbeat Podcast, on a journey where we delve into the heart of the matters that truly make a difference. Our mission is to create a platform where we can openly discuss topics that often go unnoticed or unexplored. We aim to shed light on these crucial issues and have meaningful conversations. We invite you to tune into our podcast, where we will explore the depths of these subjects and let our hearts guide the conversation. Together, we can create a space where everyone's voice is heard and where we can collectively work towards a better future. Welcome, everyone, to the Humanitarian Heartbeat Podcast. I am your host, Nia Imani, and I have the pleasure of interviewing this beautiful Black queen. Look at her smile, y'all. Look at Mariah DuBose. Thank you for Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. So wait, hold on. Before we get into it, what's your ethnicity?
I'm African American. Yeah. So my roots are here in Philly, in New York. I have a family that's like South Carolina as well. But yeah, I'm African American.
Okay, you might got some Cherokee in you, some Navajo a little bit.
So my great grandmother on my grandfather's side, who's from Philly, and hopefully we'll get into it, but it just so happens I'm like living in the neighborhood that she lived in, that they, raised the family in. And yeah, she had Native American in her. So if you see her, you'd be like, oh yeah, she looks Native American.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, but like it's Black and proud, but you still got that in you. Go ahead, girl. Okay.
I get it often. So yeah.
Yes, I can see. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna read her bio because for her to be so young, she is so just impactful. Mm-hmm. So let's get into it. This beautiful lady bring this up because she is amazing. Is a dedicated health and wellness advocate whose mission is to empower individuals and communities to prioritize their well-being. Her journey into preventative health began in 2014 during her work at UnitedHealthcare, where she witnessed the transformative potential of proactive wellness initiatives. As an executive at
Accenture, yeah.
Girl.
They got fancy, they put Ascend with future and they got Accenture. That's how you pronounce it, Accenture.
Is that why they came up with this name?
Yeah, they had like a whole contest to find the name. And so, yeah, it's Accenture.
There you go. Mm-hmm. One of the world's leading technology firms, Mariah observed the detrimental effects of stress, anxiety, and burnout on corporate professionals. Collaborating with organizations such as Exelon, Dupont, AIG, Truist, Wells Fargo, and Jefferson Health, she supported employees in adapting to new technologies while fostering a sense of community and well-being within the workplace. This is amazing. Noticing the persuasive always-on mentality, which I feel like I'm always on, and its toll on mental and physical health, Mariah chose to pivot her career path. She opted to pursue a degree focused on mental health and well-being instead of an MBA, earning her master's, congratulations, in applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, in 2023. Mm-hmm. Mariah's ability to help others adapt to change has extended beyond technology into the realm of personalized wellness strategies. As the first collective well-being co-lead for Accenture's Northeast Division, she developed wellness programming that impacted over 10,000 employees. Her efforts gained recognition during COVID-19 pandemic and the social unrest following George Floyd's death, as she created meaningful initiatives addressing mental health, fitness, and nutrition. You guys, were not done. Outside of the corporate world, Mariah founded Wealthy. Mm-hmm. with an emphasis on the heal and wealthy, a fitness company whose mission is to share practical, sustainable wellness practices, focused on helping individuals improve their well-being by just 1% every day. I could do that. Emphasizing the importance of community and achieving lasting health. Now residing in West Philadelphia, born and raised, Mariah is committed to Mariah is committed to elevating the well-being of both corporate professionals and underserved communities. She believes in making wellness accessible for all, combining her expertise, her passion, and lived experiences to inspire positive change. I'm going to start with, who are you? How do you define yourself?
Oh, yeah. So I'm Mariah DuBose. I would consider myself a lover of God and people. I'm a lover, born into really a family where my mom emphasized the importance of faith and education. So I identify heavily with being spiritual and a lifelong learner. So at the core, I'm someone who has a genuine passion to see others thrive through helping them connect mind, body, and spirit, I would say for sure. And that's really where like the health coaching comes in. Yeah, I feel like I'm a vessel. I'm just here to experience and share the love of God. I feel like we've gotten so far from what that really looks like and what it feels like, what it sounds like. And so I really, in this journey, have found it really pertinent to take the time to have like a personal relationship with God so that it shows up in the other areas of my life really powerfully. So I really feel like when it comes to who I am, that's something that is the foundation. Those are things that are the foundation rather. But more technically, I'm a former infrastructure engineering executive at Accenture, which is what you were talking about in my bio. So I worked at Accenture for 8 years with some of the world's leading brands, as you mentioned, helping them to deliver and navigate some of the new technologies that we're seeing and hearing about today. And, the work was rewarding and demanding. But beyond that, I'm really someone who has felt called, especially starting in 2019, to focus on health and fitness more specifically, which was around the time where, I started Wealthy. And it's healthy with the W in front of it, with, the intention of really emphasizing that, a lot of the times growing up, depending on what your background is, I came from very humble background, and it was really important to have stability, financial stability. So that was something that I intentionally sought after going to school and, choosing my career and everything. And I think ultimately what I realized getting into a place where there were high demands and there were high rewards, I learned that ultimately what was the most important thing was having my health in the spaces and others having their health. So it's this essence of understanding not only just, finances and actual wealth and riches, but also just your health is your wealth. So yeah, those are like a few things I would definitely share in terms of who I am.
I love that. You've touched on so many things, but in particular, what made you want to draw closer with your relationship with God?
It's a great question. So I was raised in the church up until about, I would say middle school. So I had what I would consider like a regimen, a routine in terms of how I would practice my faith. And fast forward after that experience, went into high school and kind of like started to kind of stray away a little bit. And I, at a certain point, got to a place where I felt like, from a society perspective, I should be happy, I should be fulfilled, but I felt pretty empty. I had been traveling a lot. I had the experience of like going out of the country for the first time in 2015 to Budapest, Hungary. It was amazing. That was during my undergrad studies. And I just felt like from there, I got this little travel bug. I went from there to going on a whole global program where we started in Egypt, went to India, went to Hong Kong, South Korea. Thailand. It was amazing. And, I was having all these experiences traveling the world. Had got up to about 28 countries and really was feeling like, wow, like I loved my experiences traveling. And what I realized through my travels were that at the core, one, it was God that had brought me into those spaces and places. It was me walking by faith, but I also felt like a deep need to revisit what that relationship actually looked like, because I felt like the practices of actually just like going to church on Sunday and on Wednesday just wasn't doing it. So
Sure.
I found myself diving in a little bit more.
How do you dive in more?
Yeah, so prayer. Like I think for me, I was so conditioned to feel like, and it's so my mother, when growing up, she would certainly like have gospel music playing in the house, and she was always praying. Like I remember her waking up really early to pray, and I think for me, I witnessed that, but I didn't have that for myself. So when I started to feel like something was missing, it was natural for me to like revert to that. So for me, it became rather like playing music in the house that was like more uplifting. I think it's so under considered how valuable it is to be mindful of what we're listening to, like those words and the moods that they bring you to. So for me, I was like starting to listen to more Christian alternative gospel music, and then also just prayer, getting in my word, like asking, like just talking to God, having conversations with God. I always say God is funny. Like I think God just has like a crazy sense of humor, especially with me, because I started to see things. So as I started to seek, I felt like I would just see things or meet people, and that's how I started to develop what I would say and call and consider a stronger relationship with God.
You said something. I mean, you dropping gems, but you said, as I started to seek, I started to see. That's a hashtag. That needs to be the title of the book.
Yeah, it's real, and I think sometimes it's so now, especially as people search for meaning and purpose, and that's what really I was on the journey seeking as I was, getting a closer relationship with God, and at the same time realizing within like the first year of my consulting career, I was realizing, like, okay, so I see how this is going, and I also feel like there's something more. So I started to ask questions really early on, and it was early on that I was then, challenged by a mentor of mine to think about how I could make the change that I started to feel like was necessary, especially with regards to working within the preventative health space at the firm. So that's kind of what led me to doing more health initiatives at Accenture, as opposed to being like, look, this isn't really what I want. I'm going to leave because this is not what I envisioned. So.
They did a good job with you. Your parents did it. Yeah. It's funny that you say that too, and we'll dive deeper, but I've had this similar experience. And I just remember whenever I'm going through something, one of my favorite albums is Fred Hammond's Spirit of David. And I would just play that from start to finish. And how did I get that? That's what Narda Bailey, my mom, played. It's like things that were planted that I didn't understand then. She was like, you're going to be good. You're going to be good. It was planted in me, and it comes out. So I totally relate to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Early on, there was a campaign that we had at work, and it was mainly around helping people identify things within themselves, whatever it was. They could decide, it was maybe something in their childhood, something currently. It was a campaign to essentially write on themselves like a message that related to whatever it was that they had experienced. It could be anything. And it was really, it's interesting because as I reflect on what I wrote on myself, it was more than enough. And I don't even know exactly at that time why that was what came up. But as you talk about songs, I think about the song "Your Love Is Like More Than Enough." Your love is enough. So like those words are a reminder that, again, as we think about being vessels of God and like experiencing the love of God and then therefore showing the love of God to others, it's like, oh, that's what God's telling us too. Like we're enough. And it's super powerful. So I could I could go on and on about it because it's like turning a leaf every day. Like, man, it's exciting and it's also sometimes hard.
Mm.
Yeah.
Was it challenging for you to step into this space of prevention while there? Was that well received? Was it challenging just for you to
Yeah.
pivot?
So it was, I would say it was challenging to let go of the idea of what I thought preventative care would look like at Accenture. So while I was at UnitedHealthcare, I got like my interest was sparked in preventative healthcare specifically because I had a project where we were focused on how we could incorporate technology and gamification uh, within maternal health.
Ooh.
So we learned about how essentially there's so many complications around giving birth, post and prenatal care. It's like $30 billion that is pumped into the healthcare system just simply around complications that women have. And that was something that initially like raised my eyebrows. Like, wow, that's a lot of money being spent. And through that, project that I had, I then learned more, interviewed women who were pregnant, mothers, um, to learn about what it was that could happen or what it was that they needed, rather, what gaps existed, um, and what they felt could be helpful in their experience and their journey. So for me, it was very data driven and it was very like personal and engaging, interactive, like getting out kind of like grassroots in the field, understanding, all right, what are people saying? So it was from that to then having an experience learning about alcohol addiction and understanding how education, a little bit of education could go a long way, and binge drinking and all these things. So when I got to Accenture, my perception of what preventative care looked like was heavily around thinking that I would be in a space where I could create, technology, or at least be on teams where we're, thinking through the user experience that directly pertains to how people are improving their health outcomes and essentially preventing certain diseases or ailments, rather. And I had to let go of that because when I got to Accenture, I realized that because of the nature where I was actually in Chicago when I first started. So I was there for a couple years. The industry over there is heavily like finance, and so finance, banking, as well as oil and resources. And so that's kind of where a lot of my resource clients that you mentioned rather came into play. And I found myself doing more technical roles that didn't necessarily relate to preventative care. And that was very normal. But I didn't give up on my goal or dream to, focus on more preventative care, doing projects that were more in that lane. But I had to let go in that moment or in those moments of working on those projects because those projects last for like 6 months, a year and a half. So it's a pretty long time where you're just like, okay, I'm doing something that isn't necessarily exactly what I want to do, but I'm still taking what I can from this experience because I'm learning, essential transferable skills, whether it be like working with people or just understanding how a system is integrated that will be important to know no matter if it's a system for oil and gas, the oil and gas industry, or the healthcare industry. Mm-hmm. So was it difficult? It was difficult for me to just let go of that because I really adamantly wanted it to be in my formal like 9 to 5 role. But instead, because of my mentor really encouraging me to think about how I could incorporate the initiatives like then and there, I was encouraged. I was encouraged to tap into some of the organizations that we partnered with, which was something I was already naturally like doing. We had Skills to Succeed. We had Back on My Feet, which is a large organization focused on helping people who were previously incarcerated or homeless really use running as a module to get back literally on their feet. So helping them with resumes, helping them with job applications. And that then became like the catalyst for me realizing like it's perhaps even bigger than me thinking like so vastly. Like it's bigger and also more simple, which is what I think I realized. Like, you might think it requires like such, grand gestures and technologies, but really it's like, oh, I'm just trying to help people with like basic necessities of like food and shelter. So I found that Accenture in a very like beautiful, organic, unexpected way allowed me to have an opportunity to, get this professional, like professional, like skill set, professional, like upbringing or what have you. It's not the word I'm thinking of. I can't think of it, but just like the structure around it was better. And then on the flip side, from a purpose calling perspective, I was at the same time able to explore what that looked like. Yeah.
How does that feel? How do you let go? Like how? And does that experience help you more easily let go of things in your life?
Um, because I think it is one of those things that you have to like go back and think about how everything is placed in your path for a reason. I think you learn to let go through leaning back on your faith or your morals or your values. And for me, I had to accept that, that it wasn't going to be as I thought it was going to be. It's very hard. Still is very hard. Because I think, the path that I thought was supposed to be a certain way, it feels a lot more certain. It feels a lot more like secure and, safe and supported versus this other space that I think has just like less, I think there's less emphasis on it, right? Like there's more of an emphasis on, busting out certain software and platforms. And it's great because then, these companies are able to be more effective and, reduce certain costs and such. And so those are very important things. But the other side of the house is not so much cared for, and that can be hard. So in terms of letting go, I think for me, I don't know if I'm just moving, right? Like I'm in a space now where I'm taking each day as it comes and realizing that I'm just walking in this different direction and I'm gradually still letting go. I think that ties rather back to like the whole healing emphasis in Wealthy as well, because in order to let go of things, sometimes it's like grieving the person you feel like you were supposed to be or you are as you let it go and all those things. So I don't know why I'm getting so emotional. But yeah, it's a process. Have faith, walk by faith, and just know it doesn't make it any easier. It doesn't make it any easier.
It's hard to walk by faith.
Right.
Sometimes I'd be like, really? Like, what's happening? You know what I mean? I get it. It's this life that we have planned out for ourselves.
Yeah.
You mentioned God's funny. He's probably like, yeah. Trust me, I thought I would be on a different trajectory, doing different things, and I'm learning now that I'm 32. Just go with it, and that's hard. I'm a control freak. Like, why is it not going this way?
Right.
It needs to go that way. And once again, he's like, how many times do I got to take the steering wheel away from me?
Yeah, you know what? So in addition to, yes, like relying on faith, for me, and I think this is what got me emotional, because it is hard. Like I'm a competitive person with myself. Like, and maybe if we're playing a game, I'm competing against you too. But like, so I think for me, part of it is like, man, like I said I was gonna hit this goal. So I need to like hit that. Like I need to like knock it out of the park. And I've like professed this to the world. Like I've told my colleagues, my friends and family. So it's like partly that experience of like ego, like not wanting to let it go. But in terms of how I actually let it go, I then also like hit places that felt like the bottom, like I felt like I had no other option but to let go, which is also why I think preventative health care is so important, because I don't want other people to have to get to that place in order to realize like it's okay to let it go. Or sometimes you perceive things as like quitting or failure or what have you, but it really is just like the setup for the next thing, and you don't even know, because you're so focused on that vision or plan that you have for yourself. So if I'm being real, the other side of having the faith, which has helped me let go, it's also getting to places where physically my body is like, you can't do this anymore. Like having certain panic attacks. I've never had panic attacks. Like, what is this? Like my body is now physically responding. Like, we're either I'm gonna keep, popping up and showing different things, full body rashes, like having to go to the emergency room, like things that I just did not. And I'm a fairly healthy person, I eat relatively well. I move my body, I work out or what have you, but that wasn't enough. And I think even as I, move more and more into this health and fitness space, it's like movement is great. Yeah. Nutrition is important. Mental health and mindset is everything. That's the foundation. Yeah. So yeah, like my body is just like, yeah, no, I'm gonna need you to wrap this one up. Yeah.
Glad you listened. How do you set your mind in a stable place? Is it a journey? Do you how you said mental is everything? How do you get that stable? How do you get that healthy?
Yeah, I think so. Just the blessings of the seasons that we found challenging, like COVID-19 was tough. It was tough. And it was also a season where a lot of people found like new things, right? And so for me during that time, I had a good friend of mine who had shared a program, a breath work program at Brown University. And forgive me, it was a mindfulness program at Brown University, but it included breath work as well. It was that tied with a friend of mine who introduced me to breath work, specifically Ari Kushner at Accenture, like very good friend of mine. Him and his wife, Paige Chapman, like they have just been so instrumental in helping me discover ways to really, on a tangible level, right, tap into understanding how to slow down. So it was the learning of the mindfulness in the program with Brown University. It was understanding how to take the time to process what you're doing, whether it be walking, whether it be eating, whether it be writing. Like everything went from like, so in high school, I was a sprinter. In college, and yeah, high school sprinter. Last year of my high school, high school, I ran cross country, and then my first year of college, I ran cross country. So by nature, I'm like, we're going fast.
On the move.
We are on the move. Like anybody knows, my mom's like, you're always moving fast. Everybody fast, like boom, boom, boom. So like it is just so not in my nature to move slow, but I had to. So like all these things like forced me to be more open and receptive to mindfulness, and breath work, breathing, like just taking a deep breath. And it's something that I absolutely fell in love with, because no matter what, like I could be nervous right now talking to you, but I could just breathe.
Yeah.
Or someone might be anxious or whatever. And just, it's one of those things that you can tap into right away. You don't need to go to the gym. You don't need to change your entire refrigerator and what you have in there. It's, you tap into it right where you're at. So I think that married with, prayer and me diving deeper into my walk was like the physical, natural, the spiritual, and the emotional, and everything was just firing off. So, yeah.
So proud of you. Oh my gosh. Okay, because when I think of, people have told me, you need to breathe, you need to you need to,
Mm.
and especially at work, and I'm gonna be honest with you. This is an honest, we're talking. And whenever I see an email at work and they tell me about mindfulness and just breathe, I'm like, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about.
Mm.
How did you make it work for the employees?
Ooh,
Talk about that, because I'm gonna be like, I
yeah.
don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what it's like, and I delete the email. So
Yeah.
talk to me about
Right. Yeah, so it's an uphill battle. So as I move more in this health and wellness space within the firm, I was then like right before COVID, or actually like kind of at the start of COVID, I would say, I was called on to be the health and well-being co-lead for the Northeast. And that meant, working with my co-lead, Katie and Reed, who has since relocated to the West. He was over in New York at the time, but working with him to, put together programming to understand how we could amplify the resources that we already had as a firm, because a lot of them were utilized,
it.
and then also like address gaps, right? We got a lot of, it wasn't necessarily pushback per se, but a lot of feedback around the things that people were feeling, whether it was, oh, I feel like it's always on, or the expectations were, that you're performing at this level or doing, these number of hours, or whatever the case was. And so we found that it was, and it was uphill battle. We found that it was pertinent to have our leadership, executive leadership. This isn't like rocket science, right? It's like, we're like, okay, we need this behavior to be modeled in our executive leadership, so that, the people who were, encouraging to take advantage of these workshops that we're putting together, the 6-week series that was like very much so a bite-sized, conversation around the fact that, it's okay to not be okay, or talking about, sleep health or brain health. We had Joe Hubbard come from Thrive Global, he's the chief training officer there. So it was like, he's really big on motivational seminars and stuff like that. So like, it was a matter of going kind of outside of the box and being like, look, we know that we aren't the experts in this. Like, we are too experiencing the same things that y'all are experiencing. So how can we leverage what we're hearing is working well from others? So that was a part of it. And people were definitely excited when they saw like special guests come in. We had psychologists from, the University of Penn come in. I put together this series where it was specifically around focusing on Black and Brown employees, and understanding that, when all these conversations were happening around what was going on with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, like all the names that, I could, we can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
It was like they felt, at least the feedback was, and like people showed up in these spaces where it was grassroots, like, it was by us, for us. And people definitely jumped on those things, or at least like felt like that was an outlet. But I will say at the same time, there were still people who felt like, I've seen this, especially people, I think what we realize is like that middle management is where you start to get that more like checked out energy, right? Like,
That's
I've
real.
seen it, been here, done it, like,
Yeah.
come on.
You tried it 37 times.
Rinse and repeat. So
Yeah.
one of the things that we started to do too was just like, we're going to control what we can control. because we know that perhaps in a lot of ways, this is something that we're in a space for some people. They felt like, they wanted to, continue and, climb and just do certain things, progress, which, there's so many different avenues, wonderful avenues within the firm to do that. And so it was like, how can we support you on that journey? And then there were others who felt like, I'm learning or I'm realizing like this isn't necessarily where I want to be long term. And so how can I incorporate things like taking a break or just setting boundaries a little bit more, asserting myself a little bit more, because there is room for it, which whether we know it or not. I think one of the beautiful things about the firm is when you go in, you're, ambitious and you're young and you just want to prove yourself coming right out of college, because you're like, yes, my first job and I'm making like what? I'm making this. Okay. So that's great. But like, I think that leads you naturally into a space where you feel like you have no say in, how you do things. So it was a lot of like empowerment, a lot of acknowledgement, meeting people where they were, being like, we're not trying to fake the funk. We're not trying to like make this seem like this is like some magical pill or solution, or like that the issues aren't still going to exist. And I think people resonated heavily with that because they were like, okay. And then there was a lot of engagement around like, oh, like the firm is actually like doing, they're being intentional, our leadership, because it was the leadership that put this together. It wasn't, which I think speaks volume even to, these larger organizations that do get, that like they get a certain rep for certain things, and some very reasonable. But it's like when you have a large organization like Accenture, we have over 700,000 employees globally. So it's like, we have offices in every major city within the United States. So it's like, for the most part, right? So it's just like, you kind of have to understand that things happen. Yes, we want them to happen on like a grand level, and they don't necessarily always happen at that grand level, but you can see glimpses of like light and hope when you have your leadership that are in your corner. Like, no, we see how you're doing this, and we're going to support you in doing it. So
that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful. When did you know, like, okay, I am going to pursue this professionally? I'm not going for my MBA. I'm pivoting. And how did that feel to pivot? How did you do that?
So when did I know? So I always had a little bit of a timeline for myself. I said, okay, I'm someone who I like stability. I'm not necessarily someone who gets in and I'm like, I want to, try this place out and this place, for better or for worse, because I know that there's some benefits of that for sure. But for me, I was like, Accenture, I think I'm, going to be at Accenture for 3 to 5 years, and then I'm going to go get my MBA. And in fact, I had already had my offer before I had graduated, and I was a part of NSBE, which is the National Society of Black Engineers, and they have a conference every year, and they bring, all these firms, together to do like a career fair, and then they have a bunch of universities together to talk about their grad programs. So I was set. I was like, okay, I'm here. Northwestern is there. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Northwestern for my MBA. I had a 4th grade teacher who, Miss Robertson, I would never forget her. Her daughter was an engineer at Northwestern. And I, born and raised in St. Paul, roots in Philly, grandparents, everybody, cousins, aunts, uncles are in Philly. But that's where I was born and raised. So being out there, there's not a lot of brown people doing like, there are, but the way you see it is not the same. So for me, when I had my my Black African American 4th grade teacher tell me that her daughter was an engineer and she went to Northwestern, I was like, oh, that's where I researched it, I looked it up. I was like, oh, this is cool. So I say all that because for me, I gave myself 3 to 5 years at that convention with NSBE. I went to the admissions counselors for Northwestern. I was talking to them, making connections with them and everything, like letting them know like, yep, I'll be going here to work. And I'm looking, because what I learned was a lot of the MBA programs, they like you to have a little bit of experience. Most of them, like, they really value work experience before you go into the program. So
really? Okay.
I was like, okay, this makes sense. So when I hit that mark of 3 to 5 years, I I had always told myself I want to go get my MBA. But as I started to like get into working, I was like, I have to really have a good understanding of why I'm going to go get my MBA. That was also a part of the plan. Like I didn't know at that time what it was. I was like, I'm going to figure it out. If I don't figure it out, then I don't know. I just honestly, that wasn't a thought.
Yeah.
So when I 3 to 5 years passed, the 5 year mark passed, and I had been working with other people who had their MBAs. Like at Accenture, there's a lot of people who come in and, they've gone to Wharton, they've gone to Harvard Business School, they've gone to, Columbia Business School. So I had my colleagues were graduates from the program. And so I think having that experience and realizing like, okay, we're working on the same projects. Cool. So I started to feel like that paired with me realizing that I was so interested in health and wellness. And I also at the same time didn't have a background in it. So I was like, I really like this health and wellness stuff, but I don't have any credentials for it. Like I know I have experience at this point, but I don't necessarily have credentials or like I don't know the science behind it. Like I know what I'm experiencing, but I know based on the rooms and the places that I'm trying to take this or that I feel like it's important to take this. Like I want to know more. And so from there, I just started to like search, ask questions, and like I ended up coming across the IIN, which is the Institute of Integrative Nutrition Program, which is based in New York. It was in like preparing for that program, which is you graduate and get your like a health coach officially. Preparing for that, I came across a planner. So I was like, okay, I'm starting this program. I need a planner.
Yeah.
Opened up the planner, and on like the intro page to explain the framework of the planner, it said that the framework was based on the faculty. It was based on the positive psychology program at the University of Pennsylvania, like from alumni and faculty members. And I said, first of all, I'm in Philly. Like what is this? So I looked it up, and from there it was like I remember, I will never forget, I was in Aruba and I was on the beach and I was talking to my career counselor, Ben Aguilar. He's amazing. Ben just made partner at Accenture. He's just been phenomenal, instrumental. And I just think like, I also mention these people because I'm saying their names because I'm not getting to where I'm going by myself. Like I'm having like these supportive figures along the way. So Ben was like, talking to him, I'm like, Ben, I think I'm going back to school. He's like, yeah. And he was like, I was like, yeah. Like, he's like, where do you want to go? And I'm like, so University of Pennsylvania, they have like this Master of Applied Positive Psychology program. And I think that's it. And he was like, okay, are you going to apply? And in that moment, it was like, I said, yes, I am. And then from there, I just like full-fledged jumped into it. But really it was me realizing like, I felt like it was more important to get experience in an area that I didn't have experience in at the time. So who knows what will happen in the future if, it makes sense to go the route of getting an MBA, but it made sense for me at the time to focus on what I felt like the gap was. And for me, it was like focusing on mental health and well-being for people. And that was just also just working on projects and realizing like it was never necessarily the technical aspects of the project that were challenging. It was like the people. And not in like a negative way per se, just like understanding, how to work with different styles or how to like navigate being in different time zones and being respectful of like what that looks like when your team is starting, at a certain time because they're in India or they're, somewhere else in the world. So it was a lot of that made me realize you may not need to focus on an MBA per se. And I think also I had to kind of let go of what I felt like society was telling me I needed. Like society's like, yeah, like that's what you do. Like you go get your undergrad and then you go get your MBA. And so I think I've always kind of been a little bit of a like going against the grain, not intentionally, but just like it don't feel right. It doesn't make sense. Like if it does not make sense, then I can't. It's really hard for me to force myself into it. So
I love that. Just listening to you, you weren't made to live a societal life. So what you do may not make sense to society, but that is not your purpose for it to make sense to society. You know, your purpose is here. It's vertical, not horizontal. So, and I think you've always been like intentional, and you've known that, that's why you've always sort of went against the grain. And that sounds negative, but no, like this is what you have to do, Mariah. This is what you were made to do.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to put it. I definitely felt like alignment and like that feeling, that sense of security. It's come up in so many. When I say security, assurance, confirmation, the discernment to know that this is actually the right thing. Like it is so powerful, and I can see very clearly when I've stepped outside of that, and then it's like, oh, well, that didn't go the way I like it was supposed to. It's like, oh yeah, that's because you didn't like. There were things that you felt off about, but you still just kept, going full-fledged forward.
I get it.
Let's go. Like what? What did you expect? What did you expect?
Get it.
I don't know. I just wanted to go my way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love how you didn't let fear stop you, because the essence and of everything of health, it was not new, but like you said, it wasn't technical. And I love how you did not let fear stop you.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I'll say about that? So I think naturally I am someone who I'm like, let me know what's going to happen next. So that kind of causes me to be more like less of a risk taker per se. However, I come from like a family of people who kind of take risks. Like my sister, she, Ashley DuBose, she's a singer, songwriter, and she basically was, working full time. She graduated like top of the top class or what have you, did math, all this stuff, was like really adamant. Again, our foundation was faith and education. So she went and she was a software analyst. And that same year, she was actually on The Voice. Like she auditioned for The Voice, like top 35 contestant on The Voice, got all 4 chairs to turn around. My mom and I went up to Burbank, California. So I had like, people like, what's something people don't know about you? I had my 3 seconds. Go ahead, look it up. 3 seconds of fame on, The Voice, where we're in the back cheering for her, right? But it was like that experience. They were like, "What do you do for a living?" And she's like, "I'm a software analyst." And they're like, "What?" Christina Aguilera's like, "Not anymore." And she's like, "You should be doing this full time." And then from there on, Ashley went back, to her job at the time, and it was again something where she felt like she had this greater calling on her life, and a lot of her music is around that too, that back and forth that we feel when it comes to like, really walking in what it is that we feel like we're being called to, but feeling like either odd about it or just not feeling like you're fitting in. But anyway, so she took that leap of faith and ended up pursuing music full time. Since then, she's now like a full-time artist. She sings for a living, amongst other things. She's jumped into, the real estate industry, and she's done, so much, even as a mother, and a sister, daughter. And I feel like having that example, that type of role model around me, I've always looked up to her. My other sister, just I could go on and on. My brother, my mom, like I'm the youngest of 4. And family is so important to me. It's so crazy because all my siblings, they were born here in Philly. And then my mom relocated to Minnesota. So this is the story. Like my parents are from here, from Philly, West Philly. And and they all relocated, or my mom relocated. And truthfully, it was like hard for her to relocate. She was married. My parents were together at the time, but what was impacting a lot of families in the 80s with the drugs and whatnot, it impacted my family. So my mom relocated and was like looking for a better situation for us. And so because of that, my mom even taking that leap of faith, right? And just doing something that isn't, wouldn't be normal. Like all her family is here to, that she could theoretically lean on for support and whatnot, but she had to find her community out in St. Paul, Minnesota. People ask, are we there? Yes, we're there.
When you see it go across my mind, I was like, yeah.
Look at me. Okay. That's where we're from. So anyway, but yeah, she took a leap of faith. So my sisters, my brothers, just it's just, I love them so much. I've had great examples, and also, they did their stuff in high school. So as the youngest, I was like, why do they do that, mommy? What are they doing? Why don't they just listen to you? So I did have a little bit of that. But it was just I don't know. My mom, the love was just there. And taking that leap of faith. And my mom's very entrepreneurial, very big on being active in the community. She's proactive, just social justice is super big. She was on boards and stuff within the community. That's in her blood. So my uncle who lives here in Philly, owns his own recycle thrift vintage shop in Chester. And I've spent so much time with these individuals and hearing them. And he used to work for these major companies in power plants and making, good money. And, so he had to take a leap of faith and do what he's doing. He's been doing that for nearly 10 years now. And seeing those examples around me that I'm reminded that if it happened with them, and I'm talking about family, but it also is people with my community as well, that I see more closer to home. Marquita, who I know you also know, Marquita Robinson Garcia. She is just like someone who I met when I moved to Philly, and I think that when God places certain people in your life that are lights, and you just realize that you don't necessarily know then and there why they're there, but over time you see the way they're moving. So even her experience and her journey, starting Divinity Skincare and realizing the importance of educating others on what health really looks like when it comes to treating their bodies and what they're putting on their bodies is so powerful. And I think none of that has fallen lightly on me. I haven't missed any of it. I'm oh, so it's playing double dutch. I've never been good at double dutch. I can maybe, but I'm okay, I'm jumping in. Marquis is look, whenever you're ready, we're going. So it's just exciting to now be in a space where I'm oh, I'm really spreading my wings more and really diving into this. And I'm very much so feeling at peace. And it's not because everything is figured out. It's because up until this point, everything has worked itself out some way, some shape, some form. And I just have to remember that if it happened then and it happens for other people, then it also will happen for me. Yeah.
That's a sermon. That made me think of something. Sorry, go ahead, love. Go ahead.
No. I said, yeah. You're funny. I'm laughing.
It just made me think of I think I posted this on my Instagram. It was, I believe in God because when I was hungry, somehow I ate. When I didn't have enough money, somehow my bills were paid. And it just reminds me of that, he has always made a way. So he's made a way for your beautiful family, your beautiful community, and it's not going to be different for you. He will still make a way for you.
Yeah, it's so funny because it's I think jumping into this entrepreneurial space more and more, you realize the things that you don't see on social media or things that people don't talk about. Going from a space where I've always spent finance wise, I've always been someone who spends below my means and whatnot. Once you're being stretched, you're learning, oh, now I have to rely on resources that are beyond me. I don't, this is so uncomfortable. So I don't want to I am very careful to not, I try lightly on making it seem like it's just like, yeah, all the pieces are like, they are, it's so beautiful and I'm so thankful, but it doesn't come without like the need to like let go of what you think it's supposed to be as far as how you're supposed to do it. Like you realize it's like I heard I was talking to someone recently who was saying how like God put something in your hands, but it's like it's bigger than what you can hold in your own hands, Audra at Beauty Fit Strong, like she was just like, yo, like it's like God gave me something that's bigger than what's in, I can fit in my hands, and that's so powerful. And I see how I'm someone that's like, I can't show up until like it's exactly how it's supposed to be. Like, I don't want to, like, I started my business Wealthy in 2019, and it's like in a place where that's how I've used it. I use the name Wealthy, and like people know of it, but I'm still like, I'm still coming out, which I'm very excited because I think I'm being taught like you just do it just now, and it's really beautiful because it does require faith. I don't know what else it requires. Yeah.
So talk about Wealthy, like why that name, and just the experience. Just tell us all about it.
Yes, Wealthy. Okay, so the name, I actually came up with the name while I was in the shower at my grandmother's. I was living at my grandmother's. So when I moved over here, I was like, I would love to, purchase a home that's attached to my grandmother's. And I was living with her for a little bit. And so it was a great experience because that's something that, again, as a child, I didn't have like that time with her. So it was really special to be with her. And while I was in the shower, it just came to me. It was like Wealthy. But then after the name came, it was like not like wealthy the way wealthy is spelled. It's like healthy with a W in front of it. And so for me, I then was like, well, why is that the name? Like, why Wealthy? And then I had to like reflect and think back to my childhood. And I recall very vividly, like not ever necessarily wanting to be rich, because rich, I felt like rich was like baseless and like materialistic. But we had people in our lives who were very instrumental, who were they did well for themselves, but they had it was like they were church friends of ours, and it was just like the way they showed up for our family was so powerful, to the point where it was like the wife was like an aunt, and then her husband was like a dad or father figure, because my dad wasn't there with it, with us in Minnesota or what have you. So, we would see him occasionally for the holidays and whatnot, but he was there as a father figure. And for me, they demonstrated like real wealth, like spiritually, emotionally, physically, they're active, like great. Like it was a full picture. So for me, was what wealth was. And then as I started to like simmer on the word more and like started to dive into what wealthy actually was, like, okay, well, what is wealthy? It really started off with me as a trainer. I was actually being trained by a coach at my church, West Philly Church, shout out, to the church there. And my coach, he was like, hey, my wife is looking to move into this other area. Coach Chilio, I've always been on this like Love City Fitness. He was like, look, Mariah, like we prayed about it. We really feel like, you would be a great person to come in and, help assist. Are you open to it? Now, when I talk about alignment, I, at that time, had already been working for a certain amount of time and felt like I was just waking up, working, going to sleep, like, waking up with work, going to sleep, the sun's down. And when I leave work, the sun's down. It was just like, I realized I needed to have more of a routine in the morning. So it was just perfect timing that he asked me to come in and do this at the time where I had already started a morning routine. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm usually getting up at like 8:00, 8:30. I start work at 9. Like it was really bad. I know. I'm not proud of it. But I said something has to change. So I was like, okay, we can start waking up at like 6:30. So I started waking up early. But when he brought this to me, he was like, all right, so we would love to bring you in, and class starts at 5. I was like, okay, 5:00.
Where you stop?
Okay. I was just like, if it starts at 5, then what time are we getting there? Because what time am I waking up? So it became like this whole thing where I was like, okay, I'm gonna, and honestly, again, walking by faith, I was just saying yes. I was like, even with the co-lead Northeast Wellbeing co-lead or collective co-lead, when they told me like, hey, this is gonna, cover the entire Northeast, 10,000 people, I was just like, huh? But I talked to Ben at the time, like, Ben, look, like, this is what they want me to do. He's like, Ryan, like, I think, this seems like a good opportunity. So I just, jumped into it, and it really it bore a lot of fruit. We had hired our first chief health officer, was able to work with her, National Collective Wellbeing Lead, National Wellbeing League, we'll say, it wasn't collective, but, was able to work with her. So just this nature of saying yes, even when you're scared. So I said yes, and I started getting up at 4:15. He would pick me up. And we'd be like at the studio. Thankfully it wasn't too far. It was like outside of Upper Darby area, so it was like not too far. But yeah, so then we just started rocking, and I was in there, and it wasn't just rocking. Like I have videos where I'm like, it's 5 a.m. Good morning, rise and shine. It does help. I'm a little bit of a morning person. I'm not a night person. Like, do not catch me after 9. I'm probably like goofy, and also
your third dream.
Yeah, like how you see me right now, you're like, she's a different person. Like, yeah, it's because it's time for me to go sleep. And I'm still up. What's going on? So yeah, like that happened. And fast forward, I loved it. I just fell in love with it. In the class, I found myself having more energy. So again, starting where I was, instead of me being like, I'm gonna like jump ship and like go into, at the time, I didn't even realize like I was interested in health or fitness per se. Like the coaching was clear, but the fitness part wasn't there for me. But when I started to coach people, and people started to come and tell me like on the side, like, thank you so much, or like, this is so helpful, or, what should I eat? Like, you've been doing like, like, so it just everything kind of grew on itself. And so I fell in love with it. But then that was 2019, right before COVID. And then COVID happened. And then my coach didn't need an assistant coach because everybody went online. And from there, it was like, I had this like energy that was like, it was like when the object in motion stays in motion. I just like was like, oh, he was starting to go online. And then at the same time, like my friends and family, like they weren't going to their gyms because their gyms are all shut down. So then I started to pop up on Instagram Live. Every Wednesday I would do like a word and workout for free, 30 minutes. You can go back, it's in the archives. I may have like, put some in the archive. I mean, so they're on my reels or what have you, but just I would show up and be really intentional about not only doing a workout, but finding a message. I was always like really intentional about, like, God, like what is the word today? Like, what are we talking about today? So we do that. And then again, think about wealthy. So what was wealthy? Wealthy was faith and fitness. Understanding that we can't leave out faith. Like faith is our mindset. I know sometimes we do, depending on where you're at in your journey, we can sometimes get lost and be like so far on the like yoga, so far on like all these other things, but the foundation is Christ. The foundation for me is faith. So understanding that is super, it was instrumental in developing wealthy and bringing it into my family community and my like friend community. And from there, I just started to like focus on wellness within so I was doing that on Zoom. And then I was like, oh, I'm doing this on Zoom. And then the office started my Philly office. We have like 2,000 people, but I like started to do it for our African-American ERG, employee resource group. So started doing it with them, and it just like started to like spread like wildfire. And thankfully I had a dear friend of mine, Jude Cursant, who also is a fitness coach, and him and I naming these people. Him and I did it together. So it was like, I'm like one of those people like, we can go up, I'll go up and talk with you, but like can we talk together? Like, can I believe in body doubling a lot. So I'm not it doesn't come as easy or naturally for me to sometimes speak on certain things. So it's like I'm nervous. So That was real. Like I realized, and you start to grow through those experiences. I started to realize like, oh, I have more confidence because I've been doing this. So it's like, I think when we think about, what builds that, and you see certain things that you admire in someone else, it's like, I did it scared. I like the first couple times, like it wasn't beautiful or, it wasn't like perfect or anything by that means. But over time, I think even this conversation, it's like when you are aligned with what you should be doing, like allowing God to use you and know that you don't need to worry about how it's going to happen, or what's going to be said exactly. But that God, like when you pray about things, God will use you and he will use your hands to do exactly what they're supposed to do. And so that was like all being poured into Wealthy. That went from my office to the Northeast to nationally. We had people, we started with 5 people in the office. We had Jordan Rambo, our office managing director, on the line. And like, then that spread where we had up to, it was like over 200 people who would like check in and be like, yeah, I'm coming in. You know what I mean? Like, I think we eventually had, it was great. And this was all like, again, within the work setting. Like this is, again, starting where I was. And even so, like, I would still feel like this, I don't want to say imposter syndrome, but like feeling like, oh, even though I've, done these things, you still feel like, oh, it's not enough. It's like, just show up. Kiana, she's like key to health girl. She's a fitness, like when you think about people that you're like, that's my girl. Like, everybody has something. Every coach needs a coach. And so she's actually in Jersey, a woman of God, faith. She's really big on incorporating faith and fitness. Mm-hmm. And God would have it that 2 years ago, I went up to New York, Strong New York. They had a conference. And I remember I saw her like in their previous year event. And I didn't think anything of it. I just saw that she was there like in that year prior. And I didn't think that she was going to be there because I didn't see anything advertising that she would be there. So I go to, this event with a friend of mine, and lo and behold, Kiana is the first person. I'm not, I can't even make this up. She was the first person that I talked to outside of everybody who worked there. And now, when you see someone, you know them and they don't know you, I'm like, hey. And she did not miss a beat. Like she was the same exact person, if not even more like personable in person. And I just love it when people, that doesn't happen often. I don't know if I can even think of another experience. And it was like, God, oh my God. So we talked for about an hour. I felt like she was like we were sisters, the way we were moving around. And she was just like, girl. And so since then, again, and I'm not just mentioning these people, these are the people who are supporting me. From there, she's like, oh, for sure. I got you. Like, hit me up. And she, and then meant it. And I reach out to her and I like, you know what I mean? And it's again, understanding where I'm at and knowing like, oh, I need to work on this. And I don't want to show up in that space with her because she deserves someone who's like in this space in order to, so there's a little bit of that I worked through, and that I still am working through. But I think ultimately Wealthy, as you put it in the beginning, has that emphasis on heal. Because it's like, it's a journey and you don't even realize the things that you need to heal from. It's like when you're putting yourself in settings that are different, you will then learn more quickly the things that you maybe had healed from or the things that you still need to heal from. And so I love that it's a journey, one that I believe is really important to be intentional and sustainable. Like the things that you do within the journey need to be practical. Otherwise, you kind of, sometimes you get tired. Like, I'm done. I'm tired of improving, trying to improve every single day. So it's like, make it fun, and bring God along, and move your body in a way that'll allow you to capitalize on those endorphins that then you don't have to like artificially try and orchestrate joy and positivity. Sometimes, I get like, not faking it to make it, but like, having a fake funk, because sometimes that can put you in a place. But in my in the psychology program, one of the things we talk about a lot is like that downward spiral and an upward spiral. Like, you know, like when you're down and you're feeling depressed, like I've been there, you don't just wake up one day and you're like, I have joy.
Doesn't work like that
And
at all.
right. And so
Yeah.
it's like giving yourself the grace, surrounding yourself with people, that remind you to give yourself grace, and that are like, they got you. They're sending you things, and you know, they're reminding you of who you are, and you are being intentional about your walk, your spiritual walk. I know not everybody who probably will listen to this will have the same faith or the same belief, but it's like we are spiritual beings. Period. We are spiritual beings. Like, you will find the truth, and you will know when it's the truth, when you're seeking the truth. So yeah, thank you for these questions. You're just
no, this is so powerful.
Yeah, thank you.
The power of you answering yes. It makes me think of, once again, another song. It's I think I'm saying this name right, or probably not, because you know I don't know how to say words, but it's Shekinah Glory, and it's yes.
Yeah.
And it's just like she just like, they just keep singing yes over and over again, and it's like I made up in my mind, I'll say yes to God, you know, just so the power of your yes was him saying, like, you're like, okay, yes. And he was like, I got you from here. Like, faith of a mustard seed. Your yes may have been that size, that mustard seed size, but look what he has done. You know, so it's a great testimony to other people. Just
yes. And it's like within us. Like, I think that's the biggest thing I want to like help people understand. Like, a lot of times we seek the answers outside of us. They're within us. And when we align with the divine, right? When we align with the God, like God who's created us, we realize it. And so, like, when I talk about sustainable health, that's what I really mean, empowering people to have the self-efficacy that reminds them that they can. Self-efficacy, really, that, you know, that word is like, it's okay. What are you talking about? The knowing that you are capable of doing something, like your belief in that, your thought process around it being possible or it not being possible, which I know it's more of a scientific thing, and I connect it on the spiritual level. Like, my self-efficacy is tied to who I believe I am, or who I believe I was created to be in the image of God. So yeah, that's super important as you journey on and just start again. Like, I don't know how many, just keep going and keep starting and rest. And it's not a sprint. I used to be a sprinter. I ran a marathon. I just finished the Philly Marathon. I'm very proud of that, because listen, I'm not I am a long distance right now.
I wouldn't have had to ask for that.
But it was right. Oh, listen. I know. Let me know if you're interested in doing it this year, because I do have a friend who's running it, and I think it would be a great, you know, it's the journey and it's the process of training for it. But for me, it was like, yeah, it was about that marathon. It was so much more than that marathon. Like, and it is. It's like the same skills that I had to develop, the same mindset, the same routine I had to develop training for that. I was like, I've taken all of this, so I'm pushing it into every other aspect of my life, because I'm more like, nowadays we want things quick. Social media, fast. You don't see the process. You just see, oh, I got that, you know, I ran the marathon. I mean, I'm that's one of the things I'm being more intentional about now. Like, if you see me, you just see me sharing like my journey in being authentic. When I was at Accenture, and like even in my undergrad, it was like so important to be authentic. And sometimes that looked different at different times. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's changing too, what that authenticity is, as I discover who I am and whose I am and who I don't need to be. So I'm like, okay, I'll be real. Like, this is me, my real, like, because it's not easy, even as it's a spectrum. Like, I'm just along this journey. You might be somewhere else on your journey, but I don't want you to be discouraged thinking that you have to fit some sort of perspective of how I'm approaching it. But just know, I'm also, I'm coaching. I have clients. But I'm also being coached. And I think it's so important, like, showing up as the student and the teacher. And there's a lot of us, a lot of great. I am being trained by Holta Tegu right now, Sweat and Heal. And I love it. Like, and I think God has brought these people into my life. Noelle with Paris Fitch, she was very intentional about bringing all these coaches together, because we can't, when it comes to community, like, it's so important that we don't think that it's done. We hear it again and again, but what does it really look like in practice? And I know some people are not. I would say I would have considered myself more of an introvert, like an introvert extrovert. So it's like, you might think, oh, you have that personality, you're more extroverted. No, like, it's just like, I can't stay stuck. Like, I feel the stuckness, and I can't just stay here. We can't stay here. So how are we gonna get through this together? How are we gonna thrive together? Like, so, and it's not fun doing it alone. Let's work out together. So let's not just, let's pray together. I have a friend who just was very intentional about, like, hey, like, are you cool with, are you interested, not cool, are you interested in, waking up in the morning and praying together? And in the, like, first prayer, the way I felt after praying, I was praying by myself through certain things here and there, but it wasn't the same routine, wasn't at the same consistency. So it's just like, in those few exchanges that we had, already feeling like the power of two coming together, versus just one. Like, it was just, you can't make it up. You can't fake it. Like, this isn't like I'm trying to replay. This is for real. Like, we're not recording this multiple times. Like, this is what it is. Like, sometimes I get that, there is a need in certain spaces and places to make sure that certain things are polished. But what I'm trying to get at is that we show up as who we are in our healed and healing stages through and through and through, so that when you meet somebody, like you meet Kiana and you see her online and you meet her in person, it's the same person, because she wasn't faking it. She was like, that's who she is. You feel it. You feel the Spirit of God. You speak. Let me.
She preaching. That's the third, fifth sermon she doesn't preach. So, but about to fall in my chair. Look at the Holy Ghost. I know. What's next for you, and where can people find you? And I'm talking about being your client. I'm talking about Bible study. I'm talking about it all.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
Yeah, so you can find me right now online on Instagram. Mariah DuBose is my handle, Mariah D, so MARIAH D DuBose, DUBOSE. And I'm working through my personal brand, which is the Wealthy Plug, which is an extension of Wealthy, right? And it's all about connecting communities, or individuals rather, to communities and resources that are all things health and wellness. I've found that on my own journey, as you can even kind of hear throughout my story, it's just been a plethora of people who are also in the health and wellness space in some way, shape, or form that have shaped my experience. And, we don't need to do this alone. So I'm like, I'm a Wealthy Plug. Let's thrive together and let's build, together, and let's not do it alone. And so you can find me on Instagram. But in terms of what's to come, I'm very excited about a project that is coming up in the spring. I will be sharing more very soon. And you can get I guess a little bit of it is that it's around movement, and it's around, nourishing your body. And so I'm excited to really dive into helping the communities that aren't necessarily always looked after, right? We're not. So my like passion project right now that's underway is really getting back to my roots. I'm over here in West Philly, and I'm working on a project where I'll be serving the community of West Philly specifically, as it pertains to movement and nourishment. And I think that it's going to be like, I'm laughing because I'm like, I don't even have a word for it, because I'm like, I just know God has been like moving. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be so dope. Like, think like space for people collectively working together in these areas. So that's where you can find me next in the city, serving the community, taking what I've learned in my professional career at Accenture, like marrying that with what I've seen is needed within the community of West Philadelphia. And I think it's like important and particularly special because this is a space that my mom felt like she had to leave from. And I think a lot of people might identify with this fight or flight. And you might experience that fight or flight for various reasons. And I've identified the need at times to fight something or flee from something. And I'm just so grateful that God would have it that he moved my mother into a space where she could raise us in a healthy way, get all 4 of her children by herself as a single, mother through college, 4-year degrees, full paid tuition. And not to say we know that the higher education system that they have there are things there, but just understanding that was a door that was open. Those experiences then allowed us to have greater opportunity. She made a lot of sacrifices, and I'm just excited to be able to come back because my mom is a very, very big family-oriented person. So it's not like she left, but she was like, oh, my family, I don't want to be with my family. She loves her family. So I'm so excited to be in a space now where I can be intentional about getting back to my roots, where my great-grandmother lived, my great-great-grandmother lived side by side right down the street, and be intentional about impacting and empowering this community. So that is where you can just kind of follow along the journey. Yeah, follow along. And if you have any thoughts or perspectives, suggestions, I'm very collaborative. I believe in the power of community economics. So that's where I'll be.
Your words. Thank you for living in your purpose. Thank you for that. You done. I mean, I'm about to pass. What is it called? The bucket. So put the offering in.
Thank you, Nia, for your questions and just for your intentionality and just like having me speak about these topics and allowing me, because I think sometimes you feel like you have to arrive and be fully baked. But just understanding that there's a journey, and this is a very pivotal time, transitional time, and it's exciting to be able to step into the space and to talk about it and to also reflect on where I've come from and like what has been done. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that and share.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, you're teaching a lot of lessons. You've taught a lot of lessons. Thank you for living in your purpose. I mean, I don't even, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You guys, you heard the Humanitarian Heartbeat Podcast. I'm going to need for y'all to pause and sit with this. And you got to rewind, because this is how powerful this episode is. Rewind, find Mariah, and this purposed journey that she is on. Make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you come along. Yeah, she's doing great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Stay safe, be well, and be kind.
Thank you for joining us on the Humanitarian Heartbeat Podcast. Remember, each conversation brings us closer to a world where compassion thrives. Stay connected, stay informed, and let's keep the heartbeat of humanity alive. Subscribe, share, and be a part of our journey to make a difference, one conversation at a time. Until next time, keep your hearts open, your minds curious, be a blessing to others, and give agape love. God bless.